everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty, with recent master's graduate Russell Glasser.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've just been through 2 years of hell, and in particular, one really bad week of hell, which is now over. Thanks.
A graduate in computer science.
That's right. Software engineering. I'm an engineering graduate. Listened to interminable speeches by really old engineering guys, and glad that's over too.
Which means Russell now has no more excuses as to why he can't be back on the nonprofits beginning next week.
I'll think of some.
Anyway, welcome. We're live. As I said, this is December 9th, 2007. This is a live public access program sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, and offers atheists in the Austin area the chance to interact with the public, discuss misperceptions about atheism, to clear up what we believe, what we don't believe, to talk about different religious beliefs and their justification, to discuss First Amendment issues, church-state separation issues, and generally just have some fun and maybe bring a little bit of education, a little bit of entertainment to people. We appreciate those of you who've tuned in today. We'll have shows again next week and on the 23rd, despite that it's 2 days before some, I don't know, tree festival. We'll have more information about those for you later on, but we wanted to let you know that we are going to continue with those 2 weeks for this year. The 29th, however, because it's so close to New Year's, the studio is actually closed, and we won't be having a show that week, so there's no reason to tune in. Enjoy your moment of sobriety before the chaos ensues. The audio portion of this program is available on our website, www.atheist-community.org. You can click on the link to the Atheist Experience, or you can go to atheist-experience.com. The video portion is also available there. One of the things you can do, for those of you who haven't been able to find it, because some people had said this, if you go to atheist-experience.com or get there through the Atheist Community website, on the left-hand side, there'll be a link for archive. You click on that. You can see the shows that are up recently for podcasts. You can also look at the expanded archive, which includes all the shows. And there'll be a link there labeled video, which you can click on, which will take you to the Google Video uploaded version of this program, which I think we've got well over 4 years up there now. We may have every episode that we actually have a copy of up. Some of the older episodes were lost. By the way, if you're an ACA member, or if you were around in those early days and you happen to record them and have recordings of ones that were missing, please contact us and get them to us. We'd love to get them up there and have a complete archive. In addition to this program, the ACA sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast that I referenced a minute ago called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. For more information, you can go to nonprofitsradio.com. It's hosted by Dennis LeBay, features myself, Schilling, and maybe Russell. And Jeff D is probably going to call
Probably not next week, but yeah. I think I'm gonna get started next year again.
The plan is for Jeff D to call in next week, which will be, I think, next week is the last nonprofit show of this year. We got 25 of them. We will have had 25 done. So pretty
almost
good stuff.
A full season.
Almost. We're cutting out one episode, but we are, to make up for it, we're starting a week early this year. So there's only a 3-week break, and we'll start with the first show of 2008 on January 5th, I believe. Nonprofits will be live this coming Saturday, and as I mentioned, Jeff D will call in. Both programs are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at 11 o'clock, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host our lecture series. That's held at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. January's lecture will be by ACA member Don Rhodes, who will be discussing the freethinker settlization? Yeah, what the heck? The settling of Central Texas by freethinkers. There was a significant German free thought movement, both in the 18th and 19th century, but a lot of them settled in the Austin area and greater Austin and surrounding areas. And he'll be talking a little bit about that. February's lecture will be ACA member Mark Lowy, who's a physicist, who's going to be talking to us about black body radiation. Oh no, run away. So we're looking forward to 2 good lectures then. The lecture series will continue. We've got the space reserved, and we'll have more information about upcoming lectures as they get closer. In addition to the various media outreach and educational events, the ACA also sponsors a number of social events, including Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays at the Dog and Duck Pub, beginning at around 7 o'clock. That's located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. Anybody's welcome to join us at these events. After this program's over, here in about 90 minutes, we'll be heading to IHOP at I-35 and Cesar Chavez. We have the back room. Feel free to just walk right in and join us. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend any of our events. Membership is not required. And theists are welcome as long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke. We'd actually like to enjoy our meals. If you want to do any of those things, this is a live call-in show, and we'll have the number up for you shortly. You'll be able to call in and discuss whatever you want. If for any reason you don't get through on the telephones today or you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes. And we'll be happy. We can't guarantee that we'll respond to every one of them, but I respond to a great many of them. And we read all of them, any questions, criticisms, feedback, concerns. We do what we can to take all of them to heart. We know we can't please everybody all the time, but we are grateful, especially for the people who've been contacting us from around the world. Since the Google video went up, we've received just loads and loads of email from places that I wouldn't even have suspected people were capable of watching the show, let alone
I'm going to have to show you our Google Analytics site sometime for the Atheist Experience, for the ACA website, because you can see a visual map automatically generated of who's visiting our site and from where and how many times.
Great.
Remind me to throw you on the account for that sometime soon.
You bet. As a reminder to ACA members, in addition to all the other events that we have, there's a number of special events that are actually for members only. One of them is coming up this coming weekend. December 15th is the ACA Winter Solstice Party. There's more information at the ACA website. If you're having any difficulty logging in and getting to this information and you're an ACA member, feel free to email any of the board members. You can mail board@atheist-community.org, or you can mail president@atheist-community.org, or you can use TV or info or any of the email addresses, and we'll do what we can to get you the information. We would prefer RSVPs for that event, so we have a good idea how many people are coming. And as usual, we're going to be cutting down trees, sacrificing babies, dancing naked, and having just a big orgy festival of sin and depravity. Oh wait, no, that's the party the week after. This one's just a solstice party. It's basically an excuse to get together. I've been asked a number of times, what are your thoughts on celebrating Christmas? Enjoy it. Have fun. I don't have any objection to putting up trees or singing Christmas songs. I definitely have no objection to people getting together, showing their appreciation for each other, letting the people that you love know that you love them. Exchange gifts if you want to. Celebrate whatever you want for whatever reason you want. That doesn't mean just because I happen to enjoy a holiday season as an excuse to take time off from work and enjoy the company of my friends and family. It doesn't mean I think that Jesus is magic or that, candles burn for who knows how long.
8 days.
8 days on a little bit of oil. But if you do, fine, celebrate it. I have no objections to that. I look forward to it. But we're going to begin our war on Christmas very soon because we don't want to disappoint the media.
We're getting suited up. Actually, that seems like a good segue to mention that one of the links I brought in says that we've lost the war on Christmas.
No!
At least according to Bill O'Reilly, who I think is the one who declared war in the first place.
It may be. Why does he say we've lost?
He says, during the December 4th edition of his Fox News show, according to Media Matters, Bill O'Reilly declared victory against the secularists in his war on Christmas. Discussing the issue with Alexia Kelly, Executive Director of Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good, another Orwellian name.
Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good. Dun, dun, dun.
O'Reilly asserted, now, first of all, you don't deny that a few years ago, and we won this war largely, that there was a very effective movement underway to wipe out in the public square all vestiges of Christmas. Stores were ordering employees not to say Merry Christmas. Towns were suing to get the crash off the public property. O'Reilly later claimed, now, if I had not done that campaign, then the forces of darkness would have won. There's no question about that. We were able to rally the Alliance Defense Fund in Phoenix, Arizona to fight the ACLU in court. We were able to convince the major retails to not order their employees not to say Merry Christmas to stop that nonsense. We won that!
I will not concede, Bill O'Reilly. You have not defeated me or my evil plans.
We will fight them in the fields. We will fight them in the retail stores. We will never surrender. Never.
May the force be with you. We'll talk more about the war on Christmas later. I'm done with all of the announcements.
Okay.
Although we got sidetracked with a bit of fun. What is it that you want to talk to today here, recent master's graduate Russell Glasser?
Yes, and remember, as a guy with a master's graduate, everything I say must be accepted without question.
Of course. I genuflect in his presence.
I decided to have a little chat today about all the examples I could find recently of skeptical straw men in fiction. So not just any old straw men, because straw men are all over the place when you're arguing with Christians about atheism, but specifically about fictional straw men that they create just to look silly. And in case you don't know what a straw man is, it is a common logical fallacy where instead of arguing your opponent's position face to face, you create something that looks like your opponent's position. And then you argue with that. So it's like if you said, okay, I'm going to beat this guy up after school tomorrow, you create this badly created straw man that looks like your opponent, and then you go and you pummel the crap out of it, and you say, ha, I've defeated him, even though he never actually showed up. That's what a straw man means. And part of the reason...
Certainly nobody really does this.
No, surely not. Well, not in... I don't imagine that anybody actually literally creates straw men to beat them up, and I really couldn't imagine who could be fooled by that, but it's a metaphor.
I think those monkey bats from the Wicked Witch, I think they were fooled a little when the stuffing came out of him. But
Yes. That's you all over the place.
Evidently we're silent.
Oh.
This is the time when I really wish we had like one of those little
Completely
bubbles in the
silent?
corner with sign language. If you can't hear us, the studio's working on it, but you can't hear me tell you that.
Right.
It's okay now.
It's okay now.
We're no longer silent.
It's a miracle.
We're not sure what you missed, but welcome back.
Okay.
You know what we should do? Just from time to time throughout the show, you and I should just like move our mouths without saying anything just to freak out the guys in the booth.
Sure.
So anyway, back to straw men.
Okay. Well, part of the reason I decided to do this topic in particular, one reason was I've just seen 2 movies lately that reminded me how often this happens. And the other one is I've gotten really into this website called tvtropes.org. And a TV trope is like a convention, something that you see over and over again that's just silly and overplayed. I'm sure you can think of all kinds of them just from my description. But the great thing about this site is it's set up as a wiki, so the content is growing very, very fast. You can go to shows and see what common things they do. And it's not just TV shows, it's also movies, video games, and so forth. And by the way, all the links that I mentioned today, as usual, have been posted ahead of time on the official Atheist Experience blog, atheistexperience.blogspot.com. So go to tvtropes.org and check out Skepticism Failure. This is something that commonly happens on shows. And the description, according to TV Tropes, is, the paranormal has a way of creeping into TV shows, even those which don't have a paranormal premise. In real life, being skeptical of various paranormal forces is the default. On TV, characters are far less likely to express any doubt, and those who are skeptical are often treated as naive or ignorant. For example, a character receives a psychic reading which foretells tragedy. He spends the rest of the episode actively worrying about it. Various details foreseen by the psychic are borne out in the episode. A character who challenges the legitimacy of psychic powers will often be confronted with at least one detail he can't explain how the psychic knew. This also comes into play in shows that deal regularly with paranormal subjects. Characters who don't believe in aliens, magic, or whatever are presented as hopelessly naive.
I have a feeling that you and I are going to discuss something we've discussed before that we actually slightly disagree on.
That's probably true.
Cool. By the way, as a reminder, this is the official ACA Muhammad coffee cup, which I'll be drinking from throughout the show. Because of this whole nonsense about a teacher whose students named their teddy bear Muhammad and they put her in jail, I've officially named my coffee cup Muhammad and will continue to
You're
refer
just begging to be arrested, huh?
Yes. Come throw me in jail for 15 days.
Yeah. We have discussed this before, I think with relation to the X-Files,
Yes.
right? You like it, I don't.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't like it is because they create a persona. Which one is it, Mulder or Scully? The one who's skeptical.
Scully.
Okay, you can tell how much I watch this show. But Scully doesn't believe in magical stuff, and although I haven't seen the show very much, she's I believe that she's downright stupid about it. I mean, there are blatantly obvious bits of evidence that are placed in front of her, and she continues to say, "Oh, there's got to be a logical, rational, scientific explanation." And I feel kind of confident in saying that, even though I don't watch the show that much, because it happens so many times in so many different kinds of media. It's just one of those television cliches that always seems to happen. Am I wrong?
You're correct to an extent.
Yeah.
Eventually, Scully does become a believer.
Okay.
Because the evidence gets to the point where it's overwhelming.
Right.
The thing is that there's a bit of teasing going on where, you would have, for example, Mulder and Scully just about to reach this revelation, and Scully would get knocked out, and so Mulder would get the evidence and she wouldn't, and so she would be dealing with hearsay. So she was actually, I thought, fairly good as a skeptic.
Okay.
In that, when the evidence became so strong, she accepted it, and until it did, she didn't. But I could certainly see the frustration in that, especially during the early years, where she might not be the best representative of skepticism.
Yeah, actually, on this very page, it mentions the X-Files, of course, since this is one of the primary examples. So what the wiki contributors say is, played straight in virtually every episode of the X-Files. In fact, it's the raison d'etre for Agent Scully, who remains skeptical of Agent Mulder's explanations throughout the series, despite the number of times that Mulder is proved to be correct. And that is a link to another page called Arbitrary Skepticism, which I probably ought to read also. However, after Mulder left the series, Agent Scully then became increasingly written as the more eager believer, with the newcomer to doubt her.
Yeah.
So, the thing about these straw men skeptics in fiction that strikes me the most is that they are written by people who want to provide a moral lesson, or as TV tropes puts it, an Aesop. There's a moral lesson to the character of the skeptic, which is you shouldn't be too skeptical.
Yeah.
You should maybe sometimes just accept things as on faith, because skeptics are jerks, and in fiction they're usually wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not just the X-Files. It seems to me, somebody asked me when I had reviewed a particular movie that I'm going to talk about called The Reaping. Somebody said, "Wow, that sounds pretty bad. Can you think of any movies that treat skeptics appropriately? Can you think of a single example of a good movie that has a positive light on skepticism?" And I can't. Can you?
Let me get back to you on that.
I mean, first thing I came up with was Contact, but in fact that guy's very letter said, don't use Contact as an example because she winds up being wrong. I can't really think of any movies where there's some supernatural thing thrown out and the person is skeptical and they're right.
I don't think it's fair to exclude Contact, and here's why. She was justifiably skeptical until the evidence led her to a conclusion.
Right.
And it wasn't necessarily supernatural. It was natural, just beyond our current understanding.
Yeah, that's true.
The thing is about skepticism, skepticism is not pessimism. It's
Right.
not we're going to deny claims and debunk claims. And this kind of comes up with something I told somebody else the other day.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a Christian and when I began this intense period of study, which eventually led to my atheism, my goal, my one and only goal, was to find the best evidence and argument I could find that would lead people to the truth of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge mistake. As a skeptic now, my goal is very similar. It just stops short. My goal is to find the best evidence and argument, period. Not the best evidence and argument that leads to a preconceived conclusion. The best evidence and argument, period, and go wherever the evidence leads.
Well, I think it would be fair to say you want the best evidence and argument to lead people to a belief that will eventually be shown to be correct, as much as we can show that things
Sure.
are correct. But in movies and television, skeptics much more often than not wind up looking like morons. And part of the reason they wind up looking like morons is because there's this image of a skeptic that what a skeptic is not somebody who wants to investigate and find out the truth, but somebody who's committed single-mindedly and doggedly to making up rational explanations for everything, regardless of what the evidence points to.
Yeah. The deal, the other thing about movies is that they're fantasy.
Right.
They construct this reality in which the supernatural claims are in fact real. They're demonstrable to anybody whose eyes are open, and yet we don't live in that world. There's
Right.
not a single supernatural claim that's ever been scientifically justified that we're aware of. And anybody who has a supernatural claim that wants to can get $1 million for demonstrating. I mean, it's just that simple. I'll wait till you're done, but I have a story from somebody who emailed me just yesterday, and it ties in really nicely with this, but I'll save it for later.
Well, it's fun to just wax philosophical about what skepticism is good for, but I'd rather just give some specific examples of movies that do this sort of thing. And so, drawing on some of the movies that I've seen recently, first I'm going to talk Evan Almighty.
This is the sequel to Bruce Almighty?
Yeah,
where
a not
he's
very good comedy, which was a sequel to a not very good comedy. And I don't have a problem with the fact that the comedy was a world in which there is a God.
See, and I actually was amused by Bruce Almighty.
I
wouldn't say it was great.
I'll tell you why I was annoyed by Bruce Almighty. Because they have this great premise that this guy has omnipotent powers. And what he decides to do with it is make his girlfriend's breasts bigger and advance his career. And, okay, so maybe there are some real people who would, who would act that way. But I would like to think that there are an awful lot more people who would be interesting to write a movie about, who could actually think of something good to do with omnipotent powers.
See, the problem is that if we were to write a movie about a guy who gets omnipotent powers, at least from my point of view, what would happen is I would leave this solitary little floating ball of nonsense behind and go explore the rest of the universe to find out what there is to know.
Exactly.
And if in fact there is a God, maybe that's what he's done and why we don't see miracles anymore.
Right. I was also kind of bugged by the idea that Bruce, who had omnipotent powers, was overwhelmed by the enormous volume of mails that he got for prayer requests, and he was so overwhelmed that he just hit reply all, yes, and then things went all to hell. But, I mean, if he has omnipotent powers, time pressure shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's Evan Almighty. And Evan is not God in this one, he's Noah. But it's not really the plot that I want to talk about. It's this obligatory scene that happens in every movie where there's a character who talks to God, or in this case, Morgan Freeman. In other cases, it's George Burns.
I prefer Morgan Freeman as God myself.
I like George Burns, actually. It could be George Burns, could be Alanis Morissette. Thought she was probably the worst God avatar I've ever seen. But there's always this scene where they're like, "Hi, I'm God," No, you're not. You're a crazy old man who bears a striking resemblance to Morgan Freeman or George Burns or Alanis Morissette. No, seriously, I'm God. Well, I'm not talking to you anymore. You're nuts. Here, watch this trick. And then God does some impressive feats which screw with the laws of physics or show some incredible knowledge that only God could have. And then he says, oh, well, I guess you really are God. But then God goes on to be a complete dick by not revealing himself to anybody else in the movie. And they all naturally doubt God, except for a few characters who are the good ones.
Yes, the pious.
And they turn out to be right. And
all of this ties so well in. I can't wait till we get to it. Go ahead, keep
okay.
going. Oh, by the way, one of the tricks that God could do that would maybe impress people would be to, like, pull off his finger like that. I mean, wow, I am omnipotent.
Yeah, here, pull my finger.
Pull the other one.
You know what this reminds me of more than anything else is one of the oldest ones in the book. That's an actual Bible story called Doubting Thomas.
Which is what I was getting to later.
Okay, good.
Go ahead. No.
I'm stepping on your lines.
No, it's your turn.
This was what I was going to talk about, though. By the way, you can put the phone number up anytime if you want to.
I actually have it right there.
I don't mind breaking up with calls. Yeah. So what is the story of Doubting Thomas? It's basically Thomas is one of Jesus' disciples, right?
Right.
And Jesus dies, and then he comes back to life, and Doubting Thomas says, I don't believe that Jesus really came back to life. So Jesus shows up, and he says, here, look at me. I've got holes in my hands. I'm really alive. I look like Jesus. Poke my hands. See? It's really true. So Thomas says, wow, I guess you really are Jesus. And then Jesus says, well, you've seen me, so you believe, but more blessed are those who have not seen me and still believe. The moral of the story being, you should use the story of Doubting Thomas as an indication that without getting the opportunity to stick your fingers through Jesus' hand holes, you should nevertheless blindly believe that this guy standing in front of you is Jesus.
Yeah, when we talked about it earlier, I called it's a preemptive strike against critical thinking.
Exactly.
Anybody who comes up and says, oh, there's no reason to believe it, now they've got a Bible story they can point to where it says, look, one of the disciples felt just like you. He didn't believe it. And what Jesus told him was, okay, now you've seen so you believe, but blessed are those who have not seen yet believe. Yeah, they may be blessed, but they're not bright.
Right. So what the Bible gives you is a prescription to be gullible.
Yeah.
It says that right there in the Bible. It says believe in stuff that you have no reason to believe.
Well, the other thing is that the only evidence that Thomas would have had to believe this story was the word of the other apostles. Mm-hmm. And this sets up a situation that establishes the hierarchy of the church, those people who are recognized as being church leaders and pious, to stand there and say, believe because I tell you this, because I have inside information that you don't have, I have justification for believing, and now you should just trust me. And I actually will, instead of waiting until the end of the show, interrupt.
Go ahead.
I got an email from a Catholic apologist who wanted somebody from our site to go look at his site. And because he'd written a site specifically for atheists and agnostics and lapsed Catholics. And I got there, and of course it was, hey, we're going to have these 30 topics or so, but right now we've only got one, and if you want to read it, it's $1.85 or €4 or whatever the hell it was. And I said, are you kidding me? You really invited me to come to your site to pay money to hear you preach to me? And his response was, well, Dawkins made a book. Yes, Dawkins wrote a book, and so have plenty of apologists, and I don't complain about them. You know why? Because their books are available for free in the public library. You can go into a bookstore and you can open them and look at them and see if the content is something that you want to spend money on. They're not, and none of them sent me an email saying, hey, please come check out my arguments, and oh, by the way, $3. It's crazy.
Right. So if you want me to critique what you're saying, then give it to me.
So I made a deal with him where if he could provide his best, well-reasoned argument for the existence of God, if I could not point out clearly the logical fallacy or unjustified presupposition that it's based on, I would go ahead and pay the $3 to listen to segment 2, which was geared at atheists and agnostics. Needless to say, he didn't even attempt to meet the challenge. But what he did do was tell me this story, and I'll make this as brief as I can. According to him, in some town in Italy that he can't remember the name of, About 120 to 150 years ago, some priest, who he can't remember his name, had doubts about the transubstantiation of the Eucharist. He didn't really believe that the crackers and wine turned into the actual blood and body of Jesus after hey, good for you, if that part of the story is true. So he prayed, and while he was delivering the communion, I'll be doggone, the crackers and blood actually turned into the blood and tissue right there.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. So they preserved these and they kept it in the church. And according to this gentleman, scientists have actually come in and verified that it's tissue from a heart, blood type AB, a heart that's never been subjected to rigor mortis. And oh, by the way, it's still alive to this day, and you can go to the church and view it.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah. And I said, okay, here are the questions that one should ask if you're going to examine this question critically. You say scientists have investigated this. What scientists? Where's the data? Where's the thing? Where's the investigation? You can't remember the name of the priest or the town. If any of this were true, this tissue wouldn't be sitting in a church. It would be in a lab, in a university, under study, about how some tissue 150 years old, absent a body, can still be alive. But even if all of that were true, there's no scientist who can verify that 150 years ago, this heart tissue was a cracker. You just can't do it. And so I launched those objections, and I kid you not, after discussions about knowledge and reason and evidence and how his beliefs weren't based on faith and how faith, that they were based on reason as well, his response to me, I kid you not, was, oh, you're going to object that we can't prove it was a cracker 150 years ago. Can't you just take anything on trust? That's the crux of the miracle, you moron. If you're asking me to trust that this was once a cracker and now it's human heart tissue, why did you mention science and evidence? If I'm going to have to take the most preposterous leap of faith to justify accepting your claim, why make any appeals at all? You might as well have just said, hey, did you know 2,000 years ago somebody turned water into wine and walked on water and raised the dead? Yeah, prove it. I've heard the story. It's absurd. And it's supported by this doubting Thomas paradigm of you shouldn't be too skeptical.
I want to make a point about what you just said, which is, folks, this is what happens when people claim a real-life miracle. You look at it, and it goes away. I mean, you look into it too closely, and it's, oh, well, I heard that it was some church in some place, but, I haven't heard the name of the church, and no, it's not famous. Nobody else has ever heard of it except for people in my congregation, and no, it's never been checked out or analyzed, but trust me, I heard, this is what really happened. And I've always thought that what happens in fiction is sort of a desperation attempt to get around the fact that real-life miracles look so bad when they're investigated. Because when you're writing your own fictional world, you can write stuff where God disappears from one place and reappears in another and says, oh, you had a childhood fear of aardvarks or something like that. God can do impressive magic tricks that have no logical explanation because there's some schlub in an office writing it and it didn't really happen.
Yeah, there's two other notes about that email discussion that I got. One was that he made this comment saying, you may think this is just all mumbo jumbo, but I can assure you that it's true. No, you can't. And here's the thing. You believe that it's true. I don't doubt you on that. You believe the story. But if you can't demonstrate it, then you have no claim to knowledge and you have no good reason to think that it's true. You're just believing it based on faith. If you are then willing to give your assurance and your word to others that it's true, you're a liar. You may not realize it, and I don't mean that you understand that you're intentionally lying, but what you're doing is pretending to have justification that you don't in order to convince those people who are willing to trust you to be just as gullible as you are. And even if we accept your theology, your particular version of Christianity, what does this tell us? It tells us that at one point in time in a small town in Italy, there was a guy who doubted, and God gave him a miracle. But God won't give me a miracle. That's playing favorites. And in the absence of an equivalent miracle for everybody else that would serve as a justification for them, he is intentionally guaranteeing that he can damn us forever because he won't offer the evidence to us that he's offered to others. So what I'm going to do, we've talked about this already, is we're going to get a whole bunch of communion wafers and a little bit of wine. And they're going to sit here on the show every week, and I'm going to safeguard them and take them home. And I want every one of you Catholics, help dial up the Pope, get the Pope, his best cardinals and bishops all together. You guys pray nonstop that God will deliver a miracle to the world by the crackers and wine that we're going to have sitting on this show. They turn into the body of Christ under my supervision. Why, I'll submit them to the authorities for investigation along with all the tapes.
How will we know that it's the body of Christ?
Well, see, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to find another ossuary and do some DNA testing. But
okay.
At least if there are crackers sitting here and we're all witnesses and they actually visibly transform from crackers into blood, and who knows, maybe it'll turn into an aardvark. That'd be a good one.
Sure.
I like that. That's a good word too. If that happens, then
it's a good comedy word.
We could submit the evidence, and at least it would be convincing that, I don't know, there's something going on. You guys can't even provide any evidence that anything is going on. Oh, but I assure you that it's true because I heard about it from somebody I trust who, whatever.
Full lines. I can't decide whether to keep going or take a caller. I've still got...
It's your call.
I've still got some more to go. Tell you what, I'm going to take a few more minutes on this and then take our first call and then maybe switch back to what I was talking about. Okay, so that's one thing about skeptical straw men in fiction is that the cards are stacked against them because they live in an imaginary universe where amazing things can happen and these really lame miracles aren't what gets thrown at them. The other major factor of a skeptical straw man is that they're incredibly stupid for a really long time. Like, take this other movie I recently saw called The Reaping. The Reaping is a sort of a religious horror movie with Hilary Swank. And the plot of the movie is, I'm afraid I'm going to spoil it a little bit for you, but that's okay because I don't think you'll want to bother watching it. The plot of the movie is that the biblical plagues are getting recreated in this small town. And that's not a complete spoiler, but anyway, Hillary is the requisite skeptic character who hears about this and says, nonsense, there is no God. In fact, the first scene she appears in is she's a professor. And she's standing in front of a class and she's explaining how God and miracles are ridiculous. Which right away leads me to wonder, what kind of class is this? I mean, do we have any public school classes where atheists just stand up and rant against God? Because they seem to appear all over the place.
If so, I'd like to mention that I'm currently between jobs and I'm willing to do that job.
Okay. They seem to show up all over the place in jokes that Christians tell, where there's this ranty atheist professor and then he gets shown up by some Christian Aryan student. Yeah. Also a good Jack Chick comic, which is profiled on Iron Chariots called Big Daddy. I never had one of those professors. I think I would have liked to. But anyway... So the movie, I rewrote the entire movie in a few paragraphs, and it's kind of a common template for a movie like this, and it goes sort of like this. Act 1, Scene 1. Hi, I'm an atheist, and I think supernatural stuff is all bunk. Believer comes up and says, an atheist? Why, you must have had some tragic experience in your life that made you mad at God. And the skeptic says, why, yes, as a matter of fact, I did.
Ta-da!
No wonder people keep asking us that stuff. It always happens in fiction. Act 1, Scene 2. Messenger comes up. Hey, skeptic, some weird supernatural events are happening in this out-of-the-way location, and I think you should check it out. Supernatural events? Nonsense! There's a perfectly logical scientific explanation, and therefore I will drop everything else in my life to go check out this little podunk town. I thought you'd say that. Car's ready, let's go. Act 2. Obviously supernatural events happen. Skeptic. Nonsense. There is a perfectly rational scientific explanation for all this. Give me a minute and I'll make it up. Act 3. Holy cow, it turns out that these events were supernatural all along. I have certainly learned many things and grown as a person. So much for my vaunted scientific method. The end.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's the reaping in a nutshell. The biblical plagues get recreated. First thing that happens is a river turns to blood, and she starts coming up with all these cockamamie explanations about how it must be some special kind of algae. At which point I said, surely the first thing that she'll do when she gets to town is run some kind of test on it to see if it's blood. 'Cause if you're a real skeptic in real life whose actual goal is to figure out the truth and not just to randomly debunk things because you're against supernatural stuff, the first thing you do is say, okay, everybody thinks this is blood. Why don't we find out if it's blood?
I mean, literally, it's a test that takes a couple seconds.
Right.
Anybody who's ever watched CSI knows all you need to do is dip a swab in there, spray on, I've forgotten the name of it already, phenolphthalein or something.
Yeah.
And if it turns blue, it's blood.
And
then you run further tests.
And it's not like it doesn't occur to her to do any tests, because she says something about the pH balance of the red stuff, but she never actually says, and we tested it and it's not blood.
The thing is, if she knows the pH, then she's already done more work than it was required to show that it was blood.
Right. So what skeptics do in the movie is doggedly ignore evidence, and that's what believers wind up thinking when they watch these movies. Is they think, oh, all skeptics are just idiots who aren't actually investigating things. They're just sticking their fingers in their ears and pretending that this great evidence that I have is terrible. And I can't tell you how many times people have said to me online or here on this show, they've said something like, well, you keep asking for evidence, but I bet that even if you were standing there watching Jesus get crucified and seeing his spirit ascend up to heaven, you'd still not believe. And the answer is no. If it was convincing evidence, I would change my mind, because that's what skeptics do. Is they make opinions based on evidence, not based on sticking their fingers in their ears.
The reason why skeptics end up looking so stupid in these movies is because their movies are not written by skeptics.
Exactly.
They're written by people who don't understand skepticism. This gentleman who emailed me the other day is writing specifically for a target audience of atheism. And yet at every single point where he referenced what atheism was, what it wasn't, he was wrong.
Right.
He kept referring to it as if it were some kind of philosophical set of beliefs that we've accepted. He would say that atheism's chief objection to religion is that religion provides a benefit towards humanity, and atheism feels left out of this. No, atheism doesn't feel anything. And the chief argument that atheists lodge against theistic claims isn't, hey, you guys are helping out humanity and we're left out. It's, is it true? Right. Religion is in fact beneficial. I can say this with any qualms at all. Religion can be beneficial to individuals. It can be beneficial to groups. It's not wholly beneficial, and it's not without fault. It may not be, and I don't think it is, the best way to benefit humanity. But to say that it doesn't provide any benefit would be a lie. It is a benefit to somebody who's grieving to tell them that their loved ones are in heaven. That someday they're going to get to see them again. That is a way to alleviate grief. But what it isn't, it's not a way to help them cope with the loss and come to terms with reality, because you're telling them something that may in fact not be true. And the criticisms that are launched at religion by skeptics are that we want to know whether or not it's true, not whether or not it's beneficial. I mean, you can say anything can be beneficial. A bottle of wine can be beneficial at relieving your guilt and grief. That doesn't mean that you've come to grips with reality or that you've done anything positive in the grander scheme.
Right. Why don't we go ahead and take a call?
Sure.
We've rambled on for long enough.
Way too long. Is it Little John?
You got me.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I've got a little bit to ask you there. From my view of the TV, he's got a cup of coffee in his hand.
You're asking me? Okay.
And he speaks of that it is a good thing. It can be a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 55 years old, and I've learned in my lifetime that the majority of people are followers. There aren't a lot of leaders out there. They need to follow. Right after 9/11 hit, it was amazing to see how many churches were filled up and how many people were riding around with their flags blowing. And then our country got complacent in a very short period of time. The churches, they got diminished. The flags, they quit flying. Atheism in itself, I guess, could be something you want to go with. But until, are any of you a combat vet?
Yes.
You're a combat vet.
I'm a Gulf War veteran, and I was along with the first troops that went into Haiti in the early 90s.
Okay. Well, if you're a Gulf War vet, you've seen firepower. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Seen a lot of firepower. I was in recon. So when you see that, how life can be snuffed out so quickly, there's got to be basis for some belief.
No.
Why?
Well, I mean, what do you mean by some belief?
You've got to, you just got to.
I'll put it.
I'm trying to figure out how to say it where it'll make sense to you.
Well, it seems like there's two little problems here. One, you seem to be implying that there's no atheists in foxholes, which we know isn't true. But the other thing is that when you talk about how life can be snuffed out, to me, that demonstrates the intrinsic value that we place upon life, or actually intrinsic's wrong. It demonstrates the value that we place on life. And as soon as I realize how fragile life is, how easily it can be snuffed out, what that does is it makes every moment that much more precious. It doesn't say anything about belief in a higher power or about belief in an afterlife. It just tells about how much value we're going to place on this life.
I won't argue that with you. That is true. It does. It puts that thought in your mind and in your heart, how powerful life is and the acceptance of life. And what do you do with that acceptance and that power and that knowledge that you have just learned? You're going to go out and you're going to speak it to people. And it's the same thing in the Bible. It's what comes out of your mouth. Now, mind you, I'm not a Bible thumper at all. Far from it. But I'm a believer. I believe there is a higher power.
Okay.
And I don't know where it came from. I don't really know what exactly it does. We didn't just pop out of a balloon on this big old rock.
And nobody's claiming that we did.
Right.
Well, I mean, to me, that what you've done is just another example of a straw man. You're saying that you believe because you don't accept this idea that we just popped out of a balloon on a rock, but nobody's proposing that. Nobody's saying that's where we came from.
Right. You all just believe that there is no God.
Uh-huh.
Where is your belief? What belief do you stand on? I've seen your show before. I've watched Alex Jones' show before, and I've just sat back and thought, okay, well, what do these atheists, what is it that they believe in? Do they believe wholeheartedly in themselves? Are they a God upon themselves?
No, we
What
don't
do you
believe in
believe
any.
in?
No, we don't believe in any gods, which includes the fact that we don't believe that we are gods.
But
I'll
what
tell
do you believe in as an individual?
I'll tell you what I believe in as an individual, and I don't speak for the other people assembled here, although I'm sure that some of them would agree with me. I believe that there's a real universe. I believe that there's a real planet Earth with real people in it whose feelings and beliefs and states of mind are real. I believe that people's right to life and their happiness and their liberty are important. I believe that they're worth defending for their own sake, not because some magical being in the sky said so. And I believe that people are best served by facing reality, figuring out how to improve their own lives, figuring out how to make the world better, and working out how best to make themselves and other people happy. I actually take issue with something that you said earlier, where you said that in the beginning, right after September 11th, everybody went to church and started flying flags. And of course, you're right, but I disagree with your unstated assumption that this is necessarily a positive or useful thing. In fact, what I noticed after September 11th was that there was already something that I regard as destructive, which is basically using religion as a bludgeon to sort of divide the world up into kind of an us and them mentality, which in my opinion is exactly the same thing which led to 9/11.
Our government led to 9/11. Our government put 9/11 together because they put Bin Laden together. They put the Taliban together.
He's not talking about inside job stuff. He's talking about the travesty we made of the situation in the Middle East and who we supported that caused us to develop enemies that would do this.
Right. We were the ones that put all that together. And so that's why I say that after 9/11, and I'm a patriot, all the way to the bottom of my bones. If I have to fight against my country for our values that we once had, that we have now lost,
like what?
I will in a heartbeat. Our Constitution has been slashed and amended left and right. Our Bill of Rights has been slashed.
We're with you there.
I agree.
And the only thing it's going to do is take people, patriots, to get together and start taking apart our country piece by piece until we can get it back to where we have laymen in our offices and not professional politicians.
I agree with you there.
I mostly agree with you.
I want to ask one question because, and this is only because I think it needs to be clarified a little bit. You asked what we believe in, and there's two different issues here. There's one about what you believe with regard to existence. Do you believe that X exists or X is true? But you asked about what we believe in. And before I could actually answer that, I need you to kind of explain what you mean by believe in. Are you just, what principles do we believe are good or valuable? I mean, I don't believe in.
Well, the gentleman sitting next to you, he pretty well answered all of that.
I mostly agree with him.
There's nothing wrong with those beliefs. Those are wholehearted beliefs. Those are inner beliefs.
Yeah.
That's where where you divide the leaders from the followers, or those that have those inner beliefs and are willing to go out there and stand up and speak their piece.
I think you just complimented me, so thank you.
Well, that's the direction that it went in. The Middle East is so much like Japan was. They were not afraid to die for their country. How many people in this country that are Americans will strap a satchel pack to them and go into any place and blow it up?
Boy, I hope none.
Yeah, I mean...
because we have too much of a value on life, and our life has not been constantly inundated with a religion that's teaching the youth up to adults away from the Quran.
We're just teaching our youth to disregard science.
Exactly. Teaching our youth that dying for your country is one of the most fantastic things you can do for your country, is to die for it. And like I said, being American myself, I know that there are very few people out there that will go out and sacrifice their life for a purpose. Not for a war, but for a purpose.
I'm a little confused here now, though, because it sounds to me like you're actually praising Muslims for being willing to go out and blow themselves up for their beliefs.
I'm not praising them for because then it would be the same with Japan, because Japan did the same thing. They had their burials on ground, and then got in the planes, and then they went and rammed other planes. You've seen it in Vietnam. You've seen it in Somalia. You've seen it in Iraq. They're willing to die for what they feel is a cause.
And see, I'd much rather live.
for years and years.
Actually,
and
when
years.
it comes to patriotism, I'd like to quote another great American, General Patton, who said, "You're not supposed to die for your country. The point is to make the other bastard die for his country."
Well, yeah, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Right.
And,
Hey, we got full lines, Little John. We got a lot of people to get
I appreciate talking to you two gentlemen, and whatever be with you.
All right. All
Thanks
right.
for
Y'all
calling.
have a good day.
Appreciate the call. Thanks.
And live long and prosper.
Yeah. Peace to you, brother. No, I think there's a lot of areas, and we'll find this out a lot, depending on who we talk to, where we'll agree on certain things. And I like the fact that when he asked what we believe in, because so many would assume that, oh, you're an atheist, so you believe in nothing, which is the most absurd thing you could probably say. That
Right.
when you explain to him what you do in fact believe in, and there are other things, family, love. I mean, depending on how you want to define believe in, you might as well just say we believe in all the same types of things you do. We may not agree with you on all principles. The one thing we don't believe in is a God, and in the case of Russell and myself, we don't believe in supernatural at all.
Right.
That's not necessarily a component of atheism, but it is for us. But anyway, we got somebody who's been on hold for a little bit. Yasik?
Yes, hello?
How you doing?
Hi.
Pretty good. First of all, I would just like to say, a couple of weeks ago, I found a clip of you on YouTube, which led me to Google Video, and I've been a big fan since. Your show is very informative, entertaining, and just in this country needed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I hope you don't mind if I have a question on a slightly different topic.
No, go right ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Penn State Atheist and Agnostic Association.
Are you calling long distance?
I am.
Welcome.
It's from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, and basically, we have another Penn State student organization, the Penn State Paranormal Society. They are launching a national television show that shows their paranormal investigation. Naturally, we're not quite happy about this, but we're thinking about using it to our advantage, to use the show to point out to other people that the paranormal is silly and ridiculous, and actually, show how it is so. However, on the other hand, we don't want to boycott the show or give them publicity, because we're really happy having the show be off the air, so we don't want to support it financially. We were thinking of doing a critical viewing of the show where we do a publicly air the first episode and take it apart. But that again might be giving it a bit too much positive publicity. I just want to know, do you have any suggestions for how we can approach this situation, or any ideas?
I personally don't agree that all publicity is good publicity. I think that it's, as long as this show is out there anyway, let's face it, to be blunt, they're probably more well-known than you are. I mean, I'm not saying that to be rude. I'm just saying a college
we're
club.
organization and all.
Right.
So.
On the other hand, I find it immensely valuable to find things that debunk something that I've just seen on the web. I mean, when I've seen something that I think is ridiculous, but I don't feel like taking the time to hash out exactly what's wrong with it, I greatly enjoy going on the web and seeing other people who have torn it apart. I think... I wouldn't worry about giving them too much publicity, because, it's not that show in particular that's the problem. It's the pervasive attitude of complete lack of skepticism when it comes to the paranormal. And I think that having more skeptical stuff out there outweighs the bad part of giving this show publicity.
And
Yeah.
I like the idea of having a viewing or something else, some other method that actually critiques what they're putting in this show step by step. I think the person you'd be most benefit from contacting would be James Randi or anybody at the James Randi Educational Foundation who have a lot more experience in this. But I would taking a page out of Randy's book, caution you against terming what you're doing debunking. Debunking implies that you're coming in with a preconceived notion about what the conclusion is. What we actually need to do with these paranormal claims is test them, and which we've tested them, and none of them have successfully passed. But not just test them, but to point out flaws in the methodology of those who are doing the tests that come out positive. When these people have these programs that say here's somebody who's got this paranormal claim, and we're going to test them. Their methodology may be flawed, and they may be fooled. And James Randi demonstrated this better than anybody else by sending in Banachek and another mentalist to fool scientists. And these scientists were all ready to come out and say, hey, we've found 2 young people who clearly have paranormal powers, when in fact they were just a couple of magicians who were doing what they do. The problem is that we're so enamored of our own intellect, and we're so reluctant to think that we could be wrong if we've established what we perceive to be good testing methodology, that we can be fooled. And the experts, or the people who would like to be considered experts in a particular area, are often the easiest ones to fool. So what James Randi was doing was saying, look, the type of people that are most likely to fool a scientist into making them believe that they have paranormal powers is a magician. And what you need is a skilled magician who's knowledgeable in these effects to come in and review your testing procedures so that we can point out where you've got holes in there. And that's essentially what he did. And that type of thing, I don't think you could possibly get enough of. Because if we get to a point where the real experts in trickery are unable to establish test criteria, or have established test criteria that's so tight, and people still make it through, now you've got the potential for a real claim of the supernatural. They're eligible for James Randi's $1 million prize. All they have to do is actually demonstrate it under acceptable test conditions.
Yes, this makes sense, and the answer really helps me out. Again, thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Yes. By the way, if you're not familiar with it, it's jref.org.
Yes.
jrefw.org would be James.
For James Randi?
James Randi, R-A-N-D.
Yeah, he's one of my personal heroes. You know, I love what he does.
Yeah, there's a forum there where I'm sure there's plenty of people involved with the JREF who'd be more than happy to give you advice, and hell, they may even want to participate with it. So
yeah, and keep doing what you're doing, because this stuff on college campuses is great.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, Yasik.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Also, we'd like to remind Yasik and everybody that they can email us at tv@atheist-community.org.
And if you're in the Austin area and you'd like to meet with us, after the show's over here in about 30 minutes, we're going to IHOP at I-35 and Cesar Chavez. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down. We can discuss whatever or just have a good meal. Feel free to join us. Well, I'm not going to talk about that right now. Did you have something you wanted to hit real quick before we take more calls?
Yeah, let me briefly touch on something I heard a few years ago.
Okay.
I would term it a joke, but it's not very funny. It's more an example of one of those things that Snopes.com calls glurge. Glurge. What's the definition of glurge?
I thought glurge was a piece that started off as clearly fiction, but later was just accepted as true.
I think there's more to it than that. Glurge is generally revoltingly sweet and adorable.
Okay.
So it's that specific kind of fiction which starts out fiction and becomes urban legend, but is also just a disgustingly cute moral tale or something like that. And in this one, we have a student and a professor, and the professor is a big bully.
There's a correction. Just it's randy.org.
No. Okay.
Not jref.org.
There is a jref.org.
But I think there may be. Anyway, the James Randi Educational Foundation, hell, Google it. It'll send you in the right place.
Right. So let's see. So there's this long, detailed story with a professor whose university is not given, his name is not given, and yet often they say that this story is absolutely true. And this is one of those professors who stands up and just rants at his class about God for a long time. And then he says, let me explain the problem science has with Jesus Christ. The atheist professor of philosophy pauses before his class.
You want me to take the student?
Sure, go ahead. I'm not sure I'll read the whole thing because it would take a while, but yeah, we'll start it. And then he asks one of his new students to stand. You're a Christian, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
So you believe in God?
Absolutely.
Is God good?
Yes.
Are you good or evil?
The Bible says I'm evil.
Ah, the Bible! here's one for you. Let's say there's a sick person over here and you can cure him. You can do it. Would you help them? Would you try?
Yes, sir, I would.
So you're good.
I wouldn't say that.
Why not say that? Would you help a sick and maimed person if you could? In fact, most of us would if we could. God doesn't. No, you can't, can you? In philosophy, you have to go easy on the new ones. Let's start again, young fella. Is God good?
Yes.
Is Satan good?
No.
Where does Satan come from?
From God.
That's right. God made Satan, didn't he? I think we're going to have a lot of fun this semester, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me, son, is there evil in the world?
Yes, sir.
Evil's everywhere, isn't it? Didn't God make everything?
Yes.
Who created evil? Who created them? Who created them? Tell me, please. God created all evil, didn't he, son? Tell me, how is it that the God of this world is good? And, okay, I'm going to skip ahead. This just goes on and on and on. It's awful. Let's see. So then another brave student stands up to challenge him, and this guy knows what he's talking about. And I'll just skip down to near the punchline. The other student argues with him about evolution for a while, and the professor says that if you can't see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, then it's not real. Let's see, why don't we go down to where the student says this?
That one?
Yeah.
To continue the point you were making earlier to the other student, may I give you an example of what I mean?
Of science being flawed.
Is there anyone in the class who has ever seen the professor's brain? Is there anyone in the class who's ever heard the professor's brain, felt the professor's brain, touched or smelt the professor's brain? Nobody apparently has. It appears no one here has had any sensory perception of the professor's brain whatsoever. Well, according to the rules of empirical, stable, demonstrable protocol science, I declare the professor has no brain.
And then there's all different kinds of endings in this. In one of them, he just sits down embarrassed. And in one of them, the professor runs from the room. And in another one, he just has a heart attack on the spot, which is a nice little wrap-up.
Because we got to kill him before he can accept Jesus after he's been convinced by this clever argument.
Right. The student is an idiot, but more importantly, the professor is an idiot because they were all written by an idiot who doesn't understand science. Because if there was actually a professor who had any clue what science was about, he wouldn't say, is there any, let's see, if you can't touch it, smell it, or feel it, then nobody would believe in electrons. I mean, come on. Science tests things, and when you can't touch it or feel it or smell it, the point is you come up with other ways to demonstrate that it's there. And one of the powerful tools of science is induction, which means we know enough about the human body in general to understand that people have brains, and if they don't have brains, they're not standing up walking around. And so we infer that the professor has a brain. But the professor is floored by this incredibly lame argument because he's a fictional character in a fictional story where all skeptics are idiots.
Yeah, we live in a universe that we generally consider to be consistent. Now, without opening the professor's head, can we know to an absolute certainty that he has a brain?
We can do an MRI, but no, we can't.
Without testing it, we can't know. I mean, it's possible that instead of a brain, this guy has been infused with, a bunch of leprechauns who are pulling levers inside of his head to control his actions. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, not only has every single example that we've investigated demonstrated that humans have brains and brains function and control the body, but we can test this if we want to. It's possible to actually do an MRI. It's possible to cut open his skull and see his brain without killing him. We're so good at it now that it's almost common practice. They cut people's heads open and stick little probes in just to see what happens. Hey, look, his leg moved.
Yeah. But the fact that the professor is so dumb combined with the fact that he's so specifically described as, smirking and running his hands through his hair, all those things sort of combine to create sort of what I would refer back to my topic, like I think it was last month when I talked about cargo cult science, where people do things that look like science by basically putting on a white apron and pouring things in test tubes and doing what they think science looks like without actually understanding the underlying principles, which are basically testing, forming hypotheses, et cetera, trying to find ways that you might be wrong, a kind of intellectual honesty. People imitate the form but don't understand the function. And that's exactly my point overall with these skeptical straw men in fiction, is that people create sort of cargo cult images of what they think skeptics look like, jerks who yell at them for no reason.
Can you prove it? Can you show me?
Right. And completely miss the part where they actually do tests and have rational things to stand on when they're dealing with things like evidence and figuring out what's true.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it.
Well, the lines are full again, so we're just going to start taking calls. There's about 20 minutes left in the show. I want to get through as many people as we can.
So we'll have to rush through a few people.
Yeah, but so anyway, is it Three Eyes?
Howdy.
Hi.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to introduce myself first as Three Eyes, and I'm a witch doctor, and I have an entirely different perspective on things than atheists, Christians, or anybody else you normally talk with.
Okay.
A witch doctor in what sense?
I'm glad to hear you mention before that an atheist is
qualify?
not just a person who doesn't believe in God, but you don't believe in any kind of supernatural phenomenon.
No.
Not
What I said
necessarily.
was, I don't. Atheism is not necessarily tied to a rejection.
Because, see, Lucifer
Hang on.
doesn't believe.
I hate to have to put you on hold right off the bat, but if I got to clarify this before we get going.
Because you're making a straw man.
Yes, atheism is a lack of belief in a God. I'm an atheist. I'm also a naturalist, and that is that I reject the supernatural because there's no evidence for it. There are other people who would qualify as atheists who don't reject the supernatural. Buddhists, for example, who don't have a theistic God are atheists, but some of them, accept many supernatural things. I just don't want there to be any confusion on that point.
Okay. Well, except I don't want to argue. I want to get some information out.
Sure.
Anyone who's ever been married knows that once you get married, your woman, if she's a traditional woman and you're a traditional man, is going to put you in charge of killing things. Like spiders, bugs, snakes. I had a house in Orlando, Florida one time, and also things that go bump in the night. So I was sleeping next to an open window so that I could be right next to the access to the back of my property. And one night my wife woke me up and said there was someone walking through that path, which was, to me was an act of trespassing. So I grabbed my .357 Magnum, and I was fully prepared to jump through the screen and out into the alley to apprehend this person, make a citizen's arrest, have my wife call the cops, and drag him away. And I found myself standing right in front of a glowing 6-foot-tall Negro ghost, and the reason I'm mentioning Negro ghost is because it made it all the more perfectly clear that it was a ghost, because Negroes are not a glowing, frosty white. And at this point, I had a laugh, and I'm a fearless asshole. I'm an ex-Marine combat veteran, so the ghost didn't scare me. In fact, I wanted to chase it and study it. So I chased this thing around the corner, and it disappeared behind the house of this 16-year-old black kid that used to work for me part-time in my roofing business. Well, the next day after work, we were sitting there smoking a joint, and I knew that he knew about this. And I was mad at him for not telling me, because ghosts have a certain pattern of behavior. They always appear in the same place. So I said to him, Tony, I'm annoyed at you. And he says, about what? He says, because I know that you know there's a ghost in this neighborhood, and you didn't tell me about it.
Is the punchline coming soon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he said, well, yeah, we all know about it, but because it's a black neighborhood, I said, we all know about it, but we thought if we told you about it, you'd think we're crazy. I said, no, I don't think that. But my point is this, that I can't tell you how to prove there's a God, but I can tell you how to prove that there are lesser than that spiritual entities. And as
Okay,
I told
great.
you before, I want to give you simple instructions on how to build a device that will enable you to see these things.
Okay, the best way to do
Okay.
that, because reading them to me and trying to have
Now
me write them
listen,
down.
if you believe in a scientific method, let me give you a simple method to prove to your own satisfaction by yourself, for yourself, what I'm talking about.
Okay, go.
Okay. And this is really, it's incredibly simple.
Okay.
All the materials you need are available at Home Depot or Ace Hardware.
See, it'd still be better if you emailed this to me,
Go
too.
to, well, I'll just, geez. You know,
Go ahead.
Email it.
I'm
Go
trying
ahead,
to get
tell
this
us.
to the general public,
Sure.
not just you. All right.
Tell it. I'd love
Get
to
a
hear
mirror,
stories.
which is sort of in the proportion of a flat screen, widescreen TV, like about 16 inches by 12. And glue this with super glue or something to a sturdy wood frame, which is bigger than the mirror a little bit, like an inch on top, but several inches on the side, so you can attach some metal handles. And don't use screws, use bolts with washers and lock washers and nuts on the back of it. And then lay this mirror in a stream of running water, which around here in Austin, that should be easy to find one, where people won't think you're crazy by seeing you lay down in the bed of the river, the bank, you know, and try to find one where it doesn't drop off, where it kind of gradually eases into the river.
Sure.
And don't go into one that's deep, because that can be dangerous. But just get one that's about a foot deep,
Okay.
or thereabouts, right? And then lay the mirror under the running water. And this is the only hard part, is that you have to adopt the mentality of a baby. And as you have to be totally non-judgmental. In other words, if you're carrying, let's say, like, if you watch a baby take a poop, right, they can turn around when they're done, and if you don't flush it before, or they don't flush it, they might just look at it, pick it up, and play with it. Like, they don't have any prejudged, they don't have any preconditioned attitudes about anything.
I completely
You can
understand
hold
what
an
you're saying.
infant, you know, an infant can watch a person get run over by a
Let's
truck.
not talk about infants. Get to how I demonstrate that there's
All I'm
these
trying to
spirits.
say is that it won't work if you don't have the right frame of mind.
I
You have
understand.
To,
Get to the
gaze
finish.
at it. And sooner or later, you will see an entity pop up in that mirror. And now, one of three things can happen. You can look at this entity and satisfy yourself that you are looking at a spiritual entity. And my advice at that point is to just let it go. Let go of the mirror and get away from the stream. The second thing that can happen is that it can pull you into its world. And I suggest you have a good friend with you who is strong and have a rope tied around your waist to prevent you from disappearing from this world, because that person will see you go into the stream, and although you can't disappear in a 1-foot thick stream, that is exactly what will happen. You will be gone from this world. Now, you can also pull the thing out of this world into this world, and that would be a really freaky thing. My suggestion is to just, because I would have to get into a long discourse about how to deal with that thing once you've got it here, but the point is,
Yeah,
you can
long
look at this
discourses,
thing
you're not getting
and
any
then
more of
let
those.
go before something weird happens. And that's it.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Three
Thanks
Eyes.
for the advice.
All right.
I'll be happy to give it a try. I don't know that I can get to the mental state where I'm willing to play with my own poo. But it's been a while since I've been down to the river, so I'm pretty sure I can. I'm a little confused as to why bolts with washers and lock nuts work, but screws don't. But I think there's a couple screws loose.
So, if you take a mirror, just to recap, you take a mirror, attach it to some wood, put it in a river, wait to see some flash of something reflected, and then get yourself in a state where you can convince yourself that that's a ghost.
Yeah.
And that's how you can prove this
And
ghost.
as soon as you see that there's a ghost, you better run away, because otherwise you might get pulled into their world.
Right. So if you stop to investigate and make sure it's a ghost, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. See, the thing is even if what you say works exactly the way you say it does, it wouldn't be confirming evidence that there's some kind of otherworldly, supernatural, spiritual presence. That's something that we'd have to actually test for. Because one thing we have to determine is whether or not this is really happening or whether I'm just frickin' crazy.
Not that we're saying anything about the last caller.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have my nephew do it, because maybe he's still young enough to want to play with his poo.
Okay.
All right. So, as a reminder, we'll be going to IHOP after the show, because I know everybody's really wanting to eat now. I-35 and Cesar Chavez. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. The show's over in about 10 minutes. We got 2 people still left on the phones. We want to go ahead and get to them now and knock this out. Eric.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Wonderful.
Was that before or after the guy did the drugs, right?
Hey, well, you know, I was going to ask him if I needed to smoke a joint before I looked into the mirror. But
right.
as I don't advocate illegal drug use on this program, talk to me afterwards.
Well, I just want to let you know, I think what y'all guys are doing is great. I was born Catholic, by the way.
No, you weren't.
Well,
you were raised Catholic,
I'm sorry,
and
I
they
wasn't
told
born
you
Catholic.
you were
My
born.
parents raised me as Catholic, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Every sperm is sacred.
And it's just one of those things. My dad's a really intelligent guy. He has a great job, and I always wondered. I was like, for somebody that's so smart, how can he believe in something he's actually never seen? He has no proof of there actually being God. My question to you is how do y'all believe? I mean, I personally don't believe in God myself, but how do y'all believe that human beings came about on this planet?
Human beings or human societies?
People, us.
Okay, just how did they come to exist?
Yeah, I mean, and if y'all don't have an answer for that, I mean, that's fine because we don't have proof, am I right?
No, I think that it's just that the answer is too long to cover. Like, I did 5 months on discussing evolution, and I think it's too much to go over in 8 minutes. So I would suggest that you go to Talk Origins and do some reading about human evolution.
The simple answer, though, is if you're asking if we accept evolutionary theory, yeah. The fact that changes occur over time is a simple fact. Common descent is the evidence for common descent is so strong that you'd have to be crazy to deny it, and yet people do. And public school education in Texas is now under threat as well as the science curriculum standards are getting ready to be reviewed. The science advisor of 9 years was basically forced out of her job recently because the TEA has been taken over by creationist nut jobs like McElroy and crew. She sent out an email about Barbara Forrest's lecture that was being done here in Austin, sponsored by CFI, about intelligent design, and basically covered the problems with it, the Dover decision, Barbara testified there, and a little bit about why it isn't science. She didn't send it out saying, hey, our opinion is that you should listen to this lecture and heed what it says. She sent it out an email as an FYI. I think this is within her job description and responsibilities. I think that if Kent Hovind were delivering a lecture in Austin about how he wanted to get creationism into the schools, I think it would be within her job description to send out an FYI about that, because the people who make the decisions about what gets taught in public schools need to be informed on all aspects of this issue. But when she sent out the notice about the Barbara Forrest lecture, she was called in, handed a memo saying that sending out this email was a firing offense, and shortly after that was called into HR and allowed to resign.
Wow.
And this is right before the science curriculum comes up for review. When I originally heard the story, and we talked about it last week on the nonprofits, I didn't want to get involved because this may have simply been her violating, corporate email policy, and that's none of my business. And my bigger concern is let's get involved in who takes over that seat to make sure that the standards of science in Texas public school education don't go the way of Kansas or Dover, that we don't have to refight this case over and over and over again. Now that I've heard interviews with her and I hear what happened, there is a little bit more to this, and there evidently is a kind of subversive creationist element within the TEA that may openly support the teaching of creationism, despite the fact that it's illegal. It's against the law to teach creationism in public school science classes, and yet this is what they're doing. And when they can't do it, when they're prevented from doing it, what they then try to do is take away evolution teaching. And a lot of teachers just avoid talking about it at all for fear that they're going to piss off parents or that they're going to come under fire from other people. Science is not being defended. And here's a woman who for 9 years has worked towards that, and she wasn't even taking a stand. She wasn't publicly defending science. She was sending out an FYI, and she's pilloried over it. It's one of the most offensive things that could possibly happen, right. And we are poisoning the minds of future generations because some people are too prideful and arrogant to accept the science that shows common descent. They must be a special creation by God, otherwise they're not special anymore. Sorry, we are special. We're special because we say so. We're special because we can demonstrate the type of things that make us special because we're the ones that are defining it. It's okay to be special and still be related to an ape. We are apes.
I agree. I highly agree with you guys. It's just one of those things. I believe, religion came first, to humanity, and people just started believing in gods, and and they science came after that, and then so they just took what they knew of their gods and whatnot, and tried to believe that first instead of actually looking at again they didn't have the knowledge that we have now, and people just carried that on through the years.
Yeah, it's really an issue of
pretty much how I view it.
Once upon a time we were completely ignorant, and we've progressed to where we're just mostly ignorant. And the understanding that we've come to in that time period have informed our understanding of the universe. And it's really a simple case. The explanations that were old and rooted in ignorance gradually fade away as our understanding increases.
Right. And even look at Christmas. For instance, people these days, they don't care about, even in their religion, they don't care about, the basis behind what they believe as far as God and all this stuff. All they're into is getting their presents and, gift giving and whatnot.
Which I actually appreciate. I just wish they'd be honest and accept that, hey, I just want to give and get presents. Because I don't see a problem with that.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Nolan.
Sure.
I appreciate your comments.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for calling.
We got
1 minute.
1 minute. And I'm sorry, Jason, if you don't get to this and we don't get through everything. Please email if you want to or call back next week. But get your question quick.
Yeah, the quick question is, I guess I came to one of your meetings last year, and let's say, for example, that you redefined God to the point where in a value hierarchy, your own independent value hierarchy, the citadel or pinnacle of that value hierarchy was what you defined as God.
Okay.
Is there any sort of...
Yes. From a point of authority, that would be me. From a point of explanatory power, it would be science. But once we've redefined things in those terms, I think we've lost our usefulness. I got to let you go. Thanks, everybody, for calling. Please tune in again next week. We'll be back. Join us at IHOP for dinner. And if you didn't get through, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. Congratulations to my master's friend.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.